Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is Rabbi Mahmood and welcome back to lecture number 17 in the course History of English Language. Today we're going to start with the early modern English period. Before this, we have had a great detailed look on the history of England itself, because we were discussing the socio-political, cultural aspects that have contributed towards the growth and the development of English language. So when we have looked at the background, when we have created a picture that how England was developing, what were the reforms that were going on, what were the things that were contributing, for example the printing press, etc., and the attitude of the people, we have discussed when we have once gone through all these things. So now let's once again come back to this period, because actually this period is too long a period and there were so many things that were important. So I wanted to discuss it, a few of the rest of the things that we have not done earlier. So start with the spelling reforms that were made in this age. In 16th and 17th century, English scholars tried to reform the spellings of English. Yes, we are looking at the modern English, we are looking at the early modern English, and now it is actually half of the century is already gone and we are coming towards the late right now, and there were many spelling reforms that were done at the time. Let's start by looking at the examples, and then we'll come to different formulas, then we'll come to different conclusions that how these things have contributed towards the actual growth of English. See, we are saying that there were some spelling reforms that were made. Look at the word like this, it is actually ghoti, the word that is written. It was there were different words that were changed. For example, in the word rough, as you can see in the word rough, there was this word g. It was nowadays it has become rough, whereas before this one sound was used, that was f. In woman, this o sound, woman, this o sound was there, and before this l sound was there. In lotion, shun, in ti, this is a new actually in this early modern English period, it was converted into TION, LOTION, lotion, whereas before this it was T, and before this it was sh, lotion. These were different spellings that have changed. Pronunciations of English nonce have also changed. For example, the pronunciation of the word lape, morantishly, permacation, and foreign, these were different words that have changed their spellings as well. Then spellings in the old and middle English, let's see that how were they and how have they changed, to which extent have they changed, really changed into this modern English period. Throughout the Middle Ages, the English spelling was not really standardized. Yes, one important thing that we have been discussing for so many times, and why the reason, what is the reason behind this, why the spellings were not standardized? One, because there was no printing press before that time. When printing press was invented, the first impact that it made on the language was that there was a freeze of spellings. All the spellings froze. They just stopped to their current position where they were at that time. And another reason could be that there was many regional differences were found. There were different regions who were using different dialects of the language, different regional varieties of the language, and when different varieties were spoken, definitely different spellings were also used for those different regions. But what happened actually with the passage of time in 16th and 17th century, and towards perhaps more towards the 18th century, some dictionaries starting getting introduced, and actually the main purpose of these dictionaries was to give a stop to these spellings. For example, the dictionary is that of in 1604 it was introduced by Robert Cowdery, and in 1721 Nathaniel Bailey introduced another dictionary, and in 1755 there was Samuel Johnson's dictionary. This is one of the world's famous dictionaries, 1755. Yes, Oxford English Dictionary is there. You know that a dictionary is a rich vocabulary of the it's a rich bank of vocabulary where we have treasures of the vocabulary. We can look at the not only the meanings, but we can also look at we can also look at the transcription, or that is known as the pronunciation of the words. We can also look at the meanings. We can also look at the different classes of meanings. We can look at the classes of the word, the parts of speech. We can look at different examples. So dictionary itself, the introduction of dictionary, the revival of dictionary was itself actually a big leap. It was actually a kind of jump, I would say, towards the development, towards the rapid development, and towards the rapid standardization of English language. Yes, this is an example. The picture that is given here is that of Robert Loth, A Short Introduction to English Grammar. It was written in 1762. Okay, then while we were talking about the spelling reforms, there are certain things. Firstly, we are agreeing that there were spelling variations that were found. And why? Because perhaps there was some different varieties were spoken by different people, and perhaps one thing was not standardized yet. One thing was not accepted yet. So one of the formulas is that of double negation. Two negatives in England destroy one another, or equivalent to an affirmative. Yes, Robert Loth in 1762 say that the two negatives in English, they would destroy one another. They would they can the two things where even in your daily life, even in your normal daily life, if you say no for two times, it means two negatives makes one positive, so they can cause destruction. Robert Loth says, for example, in Canterbury Tales, see, we have studied already that there was a trend of double negatives in the Old English period. For example, he never yet no violence nay said, in all his life unto no manner wait, he was very perfect, gentle, connished. Yes, this is Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, and look at how African American English says, I didn't know nothing but getting no checks to nothing, no so security or nothing. There are again double negatives started coming into the things, and then there are some prepositions as well that are used, and we call it, Robert Loth call it dangling prepositions. See why? The preposition is often separated from the relatives which it governs and join the verb at the end of the sentence. Look, what is the formula? It is often separated from the relative which it governs. Fine. The preposition is going to be separated from the word which is to whom it is governing, and then join the verb at the end of the sentence. Then it is going to join the verb at the end of the sentence, as it is written in this line, that Horace is an author whom I am much delighted with. Who I am much delighted with. Formula was, it is separated from the relative which it governs and join the verb at the end. This preposition would join the verb towards the end of the sentence. It was most of the time the structure that was being followed. This is an idiom which our language is strongly inclined to. It prevails in common conversations and suits very well with the familiar style of writing. but the placing of preposition before the relative is more graceful as well as more perspicuous and agrees much better with the solemn and the elevated style. So they say that although in the Old English period and the Middle English period there was a tradition that a preposition was placed towards the end of the sentence after the verb, towards the end and after the verb. The example is, Horace is an author whom I am much delighted with. Whereas actually the criticism and on this is that this is an idiom which our language is strongly inclined to. This is one of the idiom which our language is strongly inclined to. It prevails in common conversation. It is most of the time present in the common conversation and suits very well with the familiar style of writing. It suits very well with the familiar style of writing, but the placing of the preposition before the relative is more graceful. But they say that actually if you would place it at its certain position, it would be more graceful, it would be more acceptable. For example, I am delighted with fla fla fla. Delighted with, if it comes at its position, at the correct position, so that is more acceptable and that is more graceful. That gives a decorum and a good overview to the sentence as well, and agrees much better with the solemn and the elevated style. It makes the style more elevated, more acceptable, more dignified if you put the correct preposition at the correct place rather than placing it towards the end of the sentence. Plural of chicken. This was again an issue that was present at the early modern English period, and see, is it really the plural of chicken? Sissin, sissinu or sissins. Yes, they say who say chicken in the singular and the chickens in the plural are completely wrong. Who say chicken in the singular, chicken is a singular or plural? What do you think? Chicken is singular or plural? But the thing is that if we say both, it is wrong actually. When this waters, when this waters, when them waters, when this waters, when them waters, which one is more correct appropriations? That's, just keep thinking about that and then just move on to the grammatical innovations in the English that were present. Actually, when we talk about the spelling reforms, definitely spellings are concerned with the grammars, they are associated with the grammar, and the first innovation that was done in the English regarding grammatical innovation was that this is strictly speaking not good English. Yes, grammatical innovation, what was there? This is strictly speaking not good English. Hopefully they will come. The man who Peter met is my friend. You and me, we should do this together. Peter dreamed of a large cake. Look, what were the grammatical innovations that have been done? I am going through the sentence one by one. This is strictly speaking. This is strictly speaking not good English. Do you think that it is all right? This is strictly not speaking good English. It could have moved here. Hopefully they'll come. Will is a thing, is a word that refers to surety, means they're sure. And then the word hopefully. Hopefully is somebody is hopeful, where somebody is not sure. So there is an ambiguity in the language. The man who Peter met is my friend. The man who Peter met. The man whom Peter met. It's not who. Actually, a more appropriate word would be whom Peter met is my friend. Okay, you and me, we should do this together. It's not you and me, rather you and I. We should do this together. Peter dreamed of a large cake. Peter dreamt. It's not dreamed. Peter dreamt of a large cake. These were some of the innovations that were going on, and these are some of the differences in this English that are found from today's English. And these are the differences that I have pointed out. Let's see that what were the grammatical innovations that were going on in the German. When them, do you think that you can read on this German? Perhaps it will not be possible. So let's skip these German innovations and let's move on to the English and the Latin. But and let's look at Roberts. In 1582, he actually talked about English and in the Latin, and he said, but why not all in English? A tongue of itself, both deep in conceit and frank in delivery. I do not think that any language, be it whatsoever, is better be able to utter all arguments, either with more pith or greater plainness than our English tongue is, if this English utter be skillful in the matter which he is to utter, as the foreign utterer is. Yes, these are the beautiful words that are said by Mr. Robert in 1582 about the importance of English. He says that English is perhaps a language that that can have the one of the best expressions of words, languages, that can express the feelings, that can express the things, and the people would feel more easy, more comfortable in explaining the things. So he said that why not to prefer English over Latin, etc. Some Latin loan words that were taken. Some seek so far for outlandish English that they forget altogether their mother tongues, and I dare swear this: if some of their mothers were ill, they will not be able to tell what they say. The vulnerant or the foolish fanatical that swells but of learning will so latin their tongues that the simple cannot but wonder at their talk, and think surely they speak by same revelation. Yes, there are so many. This is an example of the Latin loan words that were made in English. Some other Latin loan words are given here, for example, and these are all as Thomas Wilson in 17th century has described them. I know them that think rhetoric to stand whole upon dark words, and he that can catch an ink horn term by the tail, him they come to be a fine Englishman and a good rhetorician. Yes, a few more Latin words that have been made a part of English and that have become English language itself now. Now we are going to after the loan words. Loan words are those words that are taken as it is and that are borrowed, and then they are added and made a part of some specific language. Now moving away from the loan words, we are going into some word coinages. We are going to look into how different words were coined in English language, although the words were coming from some other language, but how they were coined and how they were made and contributed a part to be a part of one specific language. Word coinages, this is known as causerisms. For example, look at the word that have been coined. The word is lunatic, for example, and the English word that is word coinage is that of mooned. Instead of lunatic, it is mooned. And in Latin, the word is crucified, and in English, the word that is taken is crossed. Parable is a word, again, a word that is taken from Latin, and it has changed into be word in English word coinage. English has coined this word, deriving the meanings from the actual Latin words. Prophet, was a word that was used in Latin language, and in English word, when it was coined English language, it became foresayer. Okay, then in muscles, another Latin word that was used in English language, it became flesh strings. Muscles and flesh strings. Yes, this is a new coinage, and this is a word of English its own self, but actually it is coming from the word muscles. The word triangle, it has become in English is tree-like. Okay, the word in Latin is conclusion, and in English it has become and say. In Latin the word is definition, and it has become say what. Very beautiful words. Coinage. Irony, the word in Latin is irony, and in English it has become dry mock. Yes, dry mock. You need to actually just need to you just need to get this idea that although the words that English itself has coined now, these are no more similar to its origin, but still there are some studies that are going on in those fields, and they have shown, yes, that these words have been derived from these origins. Some other word coinage are, for example, the word ballotant has become a word now. Cherub, delf, belt, glance, endear, weary, and gloomy. Some clippings. Clippings is a combination of different words. A few of them we have also observed even before. So we are not going to go into that much detail. It's actually vanguard. The example, it is a clip. Actually, it is found into this word. It is when rear comes from this word, and fortnight, a combination of 14 nights. Okay, some blends. Blends the combination of two words. Dumb plus confound. It makes dumbfound. Apathy and pathetic. Then splash and sputter, it makes splatter. Some back formations, difficulty and unit, it makes unity. Now just go into more of the details of language change, and let's see that whether it is a progress or a decay that is going on. Actually, just for your information, the thing is that for this lecture I'll be using it just one chunk because actually the whole of the course is about, as we were saying, it's about language change. Yes, the whole of the course that we were saying, it's about language change. So in today's lecture I'll be just touching base with that. I'll be just having a little knowledge of the overall language change, and I'll be looking at this at what is the progress or the decay of language change that is discussed by different people. But for another lecture we'll be looking into the detailed description of the process of language change, that what is this and how it has taken the new form that is present up till now. Yes, language change, it's a progress or a decay. Yes, what do you understand by this word? It's a progress or a decay. If we are saying, actually these are the two point of views. Actually these are the two concepts about language decay. If on one hand we are saying that language is changing. Yes, language changes. Yes, so is very, very true. Language changes. So the change of language, do you think that the language is progressing? There is something that is internal change is going on, or in that sense, if we are saying that is a progress, If we look at it in the form of progress, progress means it is actually a kind of language is evolving. Is the language evolving? Is it one concept? Or if language is evolving, we are saying it's a progress, then we'll see that whether the language that has already evolved, that has come up actually, or we are talking about some internal progress, internal changes that are going within the language, within the structures of the language. Internal changes mean the changes that are going through in the structure of the language. For example, in the structure of the language, it means in the seven basic levels of the language. Levels of the language, for example, the change, if we're talking about some internal change, it means that there is a change that is coming on the level of sounds, that is level of phonetics and phonology. If we say that there is a change that is continuously taking place, it's a language change actually, that is continuously taking place, we'll say that it is being there, different forms, word forms are being changed, different words are, different spellings are being changed. So there is a change on a morphological level, on the lexical level. Okay, after this we say yes, the structure of language has changed, so the combinations, the way these languages, these different words were combined and make up different sentences, this structure has changed. For example, the structure of subject, verb and object, it has changed. Are we going to look at that? Or are we saying that that is a syntactical change actually? Are we saying that a language has changed semantically as well? There were some words that have certain meanings at one particular era of time, at one period of the history, and then there are some words that have the meanings of which words have changed from that because of these differences in the periods. For example, the word meat, that has different meanings in Old English period, and the meat that has different meanings in the modern English period. Have they really changed? What is the main reason actually of this language change? What is it really something that is internal going on? Is there a change in the grammar? Is there a change in the meanings? Is there a change in the overall discourse structure of the change? So what is this? Is it a change is, or means it means this progress? If we are talking about the languages are evolving and are some internal changes going on, and we are saying, if we say that language is progressing, so does it mean that it is a positive sign? Yes. Is it really a positive sign that languages are progressing? Positive progressing, does it also refers to development of language as well? Yes. Is it so that it refers to the development of language? Or this is one side actually, this is, we can say this is one side, and this is perhaps the positive side as well. Now just let's look at the second side, that is, I would say, perhaps the negative side. What comes to our mind when we hear this word decay? Decay means we are saying there is a language change, the language is decaying, there is perhaps it is deteriorating. Are the languages deteriorating? Are the languages decaying? Or are the languages vanishing? What is actually going on? If the languages are vanishing, it means some new languages are taking place. New languages are taking place. Yes. So we are while we discuss language change, so definitely we say that we are going to look both at the positive and the negative features. Both on the both sides, we'll be discussing these two things. In the Guardian, it was said, in the Guardian is actually a very top-ranked newspaper in UK, and it was said in that the standard of speech and pronunciation in England has declined so much that one is almost ashamed to let foreigners hear it. Great, a very, very interesting quote from the Guardian on the status of English, on the status of English language. It says that the standard of speech and pronunciation, the focus is on what? Speech, on the speaking skills only. This speech and pronunciation, these two things are referring to speaking skills. Okay. They are saying the standard of these speaking skills in England has declined. It has come so much to the lowest level that one is almost ashamed to let foreigners hear it. That if any foreigner is going to hear this English language, they are going to be ashamed, though, that this is not the language actually. So what does it mean? It means that there is some change that is going on. And again, the question is whether it's progress or whether it's a decay, whether it's a positive feature of the language that is going on or whether it's a negative feature of the language that is taking place. There was some other report about in the Daily Telegraph about language change, and this report says, through sheer laziness and sloppiness of mind, we are in the danger of losing our past subjunctives. Yes, this question of laziness, this question of change, actually now there are some reasons that are given. What are the reasons? In the first quote, in that was this one in the Guardian, actually the outcome or the consequences of the change were narrated, and in this thing, through sheer laziness and sloppiness of the mind. The two main reasons that have been told. The first reason is that of sheer laziness, a complete laziness and sloppiness of mind. And the second is sloppiness, that there is something sloppy in our mind. We are in the danger of losing our past. It is perhaps again a satire. It's actually an irony, it's a taunt on the people who speak English, that it is decaying because of the laziness of the people. Perhaps people are not being more innovative, people are not creative, and they are not using their language in the best way that they should use. So the sloppiness of the mind, we are in the danger of losing our past subjunctive. They say that we will lose our past language. Yes, then there are some other things about this language change. We seem to be moving towards a social and linguistic situation in which nobody says or writes anything more than approximation to what he or she means. Yes, see, the language has been changing, and language has only been confined to which thing? We seem to be moving towards a social and linguistic situation. There is actually, the writer in this is talking about this linguistic situation, about the situation of language. Linguistic situation is actually a situation where language is playing its part. It is a linguistic situation in which nobody says or writes anything, where nobody has any right of saying anything or of writing anything, only rather than an approximation to what he or she means. Means the people are so busy these days that they are minimizing, they are reducing the use of language as well. And the use of language has been reduced to such a great level that perhaps they cannot actually have time to express the relevant things. They would only speak those things that are needed, or they would only write those things that are needed. I just forgot to tell you one thing, that while we talk about language, actually we are talking about language from four perspectives. We are talking not only about writing of language, but also we are talking about speaking of language. We are also at the same time talking about the reading of language, as well as we are talking about listening of language, where we have to listen. So language is an overall phenomena. While I talk about language, language has got four basic skills. These are all the four skills that are related to language, and I just wanted to make it clear that these, when I talk about language, language means it's a combination of both writing, reading, speaking and listening, all the four skills. So this Kingsley Amis, he was lamenting about the language. He was lamenting means he was feeling sad, he was feeling really very bad about the language in general, and he was saying that people are reducing or minimizing the use of English language. And it is again, perhaps don't know that whether it's a process or a decay. Evening Standard, it was written in Evening Standard that we go out of our ways to promulgate incessantly the very ugliest sounds and the worst possible grammars. Yes, it is again referring to the use of English language, and perhaps to the change of English language that has already come in it. Here it is said that in the English Standard that we go out of our ways. Sometimes while in English, there are restrictions, there are some conventions, there are some rules that you have to follow for the sake of English. And now what these rules are, actually these rules say that these are sometimes very strict conventions. For example, the noun phrase is a combination of the noun determiner sometimes, and there are the rules, and then the rules are not 100% applicable on English, so the things vary. And it is actually an satire, it is a taunt on the English language, that perhaps the people are getting sick of these strict structures and they wanted to move away out of these structures. So this is it means that this is another problem with the language change. It is another factor for the language change, and language change is a progress or a decay is again a question that is yet to be debated. Language change in Muller in 1866, in a very late history, he said that language change is a decay. It's not the progress. Perhaps he's being more judgmental right now, and he's giving his judgment about language change by saying that it's a decay, it's a deterioration, where one language is dying and the others are taking place. Language as a whole is dying, or maybe a few components of the language are dying, and then a few of the changes are taking place, not only in the internal structure but also in the outer structure of language as well. Let's see that what Max Muller in 1868 say about language change. He says that the history of all the Aryan languages, that is Indo-European languages, is nothing but a gradual process of decay. Yes, the languages that were there, that existed in the pre-primitive times, that were there in the beginnings, perhaps now they have extinguished, they have already vanished, and Why they have vanished? Because there is a gradual process of decay that is going on in the language. A change is continuously taking place, and the new languages are coming on, and they are making their own place in the language tree, and the previous languages that were there, they are moving away and they are dying. Another person, Otto Jespersen, was very famous man. In 1922, he gave a new dimension to the concept of language change, and he said that language change is a progress. Yes, a very contemporary view to this language decay, where in language decay it was actually said that the language that the previous languages, they got corrupted, they got deteriorated, so they got decayed, they were destroyed, they were vanished, they were not existing. And whereas Otto Jespersen has given his own view regarding language change, and he says that no, it's not a decay, it's a progress. A change would come, but in a progressive manner. A progress would be there, a slow and gradual progress would be there, not only in the infrastructure but also in the on the literal and the surface structure of language as well. Now let's look at the words that he has used for it in 1922. In the evolution of languages, the discarding of old flexions goes hand in hand with the development of simpler and more regular expedients that are rather less liable than the old ones to produce misunderstandings. Yes, he is actually, as I told you earlier, that language change is more about the evolution. It's an evolutionary process where it's a step-by-step gradual process where one thing is being promoted, where one language is being developed. So in the evolution of languages, the discarding of old flexions goes hand in hand. The discarding of old flexions, where you are discarding a few of the olden things, and what do? You discard a few of the old things. It goes hand in hand with the development of simpler and more regular expedients. You will be writing down a few of the more regular expedients that are rather less liable than the old ones, because the old things becomes old with the passage of time and the new things take place. So they say there comes a change, as we have been saying in our lectures, that a change has been taking place starting from the early shape of the language and coming to the present shape of the language. We are noticing, yes, that the change is going on in the language. And they say it's a progress, it's not a decay. Things are not decaying, rather they are being fine-tuned with the passage of time, and they are taking some new place. Language change is neither progress nor a decay. Yes, another neutral kind of view about these two things. Yes, and the views is progress in the absolute sense is impossible, just as it is in morality or politics. It is simply that different states exist, succeeding each other, each dominated by certain general laws imposed by the equilibrium of the forces with which they are confronted. So it is with the language. Yes, actually it's quite a neutral neutral point of view about language and the language change. While we were discussing, we were debating that whether language change is a decay or whether language change is a progress. It's a progressive thing. Actually, this person, Joseph Vendres, he has given a very neutral view. He says it's neither a progress nor a decay. Because why? The reasons that he gives, he says that progress in the absolute sense is impossible. If we are saying that today's English is a continuation of the first ever spoken language, because these are descendant of the same languages, of the same thing. If we say that this is a descendant of that thing, and it is and up till now the languages is being changed, so we'll get a bit confused, because what is the extent of progress then? Will it always keep progressing, or what will it do? There is a progress in the absolute sense is impossible, just as it is in morality or the politics. It is simply that different states exist succeeding each other. They dominated by the certain general laws imposed by the equilibriums. They are saying yes, the progress can be there. It is simply the thing is that different states exist. They're the different states of, let's say, on one hand of progressing, on the other hand of decaying. These are the two states of the language of which we are talking about. We're saying that both the states can exist but succeeding each other. Sometimes on one hand the progressing is going on, sometimes on the other hand the decay is going on. The two states, they are competing each other. One is succeeding and the other one is following. So it's a kind of race that is going on, and each dominated by the central general laws. Definitely the two states are trying to compete, and they have got certain general laws imposed by the equilibriums of the forces with which they are confronted. These laws would be imposed by the equilibriums of the forces, of all the forces that are over there with which they are confronted. So it is with the language. So within the language there is actually a consistent struggle. We say that is going on, a consistent struggle is going on between the two states. One state is a state of progress and the other state is a state of decay. If we are saying that it is both, it is neutral, so it means it is no more than a struggle that is going on with the language. Sometimes the focus would be more on the progress. On the other hand, sometimes the focus can be more on the decay. A little bit brief recapitulation of William Shakespeare, who has lived in 1564 to 1616 and who himself was an agent of change. While we were talking about language, that the language has changed, the language has taken a new shape. So I just wanted to see that how language has changed, what was the language in his times. This is actually, his times are the same as that of early modern English period. He was from Renaissance age. Within Renaissance he was from Elizabethan age. From Elizabethan age he has actually done numerous work in that age, and he is up till now after passing so many centuries and the ages, he has been regarded one of the bestest writer of the world, the dramatist of the world. So as we discussed earlier as well, that he has given a new dimension. He was very creative, he was innovative, he wanted to go beyond the structures. He wanted to move beyond the defined structures, language structures that were there. So when he tried to move from the language structures, he definitely gave a big collection of so many things. We have looked in detail the different collection of the words. We have looked at different coinages that were given by different new words that were coined by Shakespeare solely. We have looked at so many blended words that he has given. We have looked at the words that were affixed words that has a combination of both prefixes and suffixes in the language, and that were a combination of William Shakespeare. We have already gone through that much, but still it's just a recapitulation to add toward the language change. Today we are going to look at his one particular example, and in this one particular example we are going to focus on one drama of Shakespeare. That is the name of the drama is Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar and is again a very famous play, although Hamlet that we discussed earlier, the examples of which we have been looking at, Hamlet has been far more successful and far more famous drama in the history of English language as well as in the history of English literature of Renaissance age. But now I'll be just changing a shift and I'll be discussing a bit of Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar, it was published in 1599 by William Shakespeare. Yes, there is actually the second act of Julius Caesar. Let me tell you one thing for your information, that a drama is, as we said, that literature is basically divided into three main genres. One is poetry, second is drama, the third is novel. Poetry, drama, novel. These are the three main genres of literature. Let me write this word down, because this is actually, the word is genre. It is taken from basically Latin word, and it means a kind, a type. When we are talking about, right now we are looking at the example of a drama, and the drama is that of Julius Caesar. It is, yes, I was saying you that a drama of Shakespearean time, it was most of the time divided into different acts. There were different scenes and different acts. Mostly Shakespeare gave the idea of 5 acts in a play, and within 5 acts there used to be many scenes varying in the different acts. So today we are going to look at a chunk of Act 2 from Julius Caesar. There are a few lines, and these lines are a conversation between 2 famous characters of the drama. These lines were spoken, are a kind of dialogue between Brutus and Lucius. Brutus was a very major character of the drama. Let's see that what language they have used, and let's see that how what are the contributions that they have made in the history of English language. Brutus is talking to Lucius, and he says, "Lucius, who's that knocks?" Re-enter Lucius with the Ligarius. He is coming in and he says, "He's a sick man that will speak with you." It's a quite simple English that is perhaps we are using right now. Then Brutus says, "Caius Ligarius, that Metellus spake of. Boy, stand aside, Caius Ligarius, how?" Yes, the word, look at this word, spake of. This was a change that I was talking about. Spake is actually a word these days that is known as speak. It has changed. It is rather it refers to a change, language change, and the progress within the language change, that the spelling used to be before, at this time the spellings used to be spake, S-P-A-K-E, and now the spellings are speak, S-P-E-A-K, speak. Yes, Brutus is saying, "Caius Ligarius, that Metellus spake of. Boy, stand aside, Caius Ligarius, how?" Ligarius says, "Vosef, good morrow, from a feeble tongue." Good morrow. Do you think that, have you ever gone through this word? Good morrow. Again, a changed word that was there, that was perhaps used by Shakespeare in his writing, and perhaps it does not exist these days. Yes, Brutus, "Oh, what a time have you chose out, brave Caius, to wear a kerchief?" Yes, look at the word kerchief. "Would you were not sick?" Ligarius, "I am not sick. If Brutus have in hand any exploit worthy the name of honor." Yes, it's the same English that we have been studying, that we have been reading. So Brutus says, such an exploit have I in hand. Ligarius, had you healthful ear to hear of it? Ligarius, by all the gods that Romans bore before, I here discard my sickness. Soul of Rome, brave son, derived from the honorable lines, thou, like an exorcist, hast conjured up my mortified spirit. Now bid me run, and I will strive with the things impossible. Ye get the better of them. What's to do? Yes, these are perhaps I don't find some new word that was used here, and it is almost a repetition of the same thing. And then Brutus says, a piece of work that will make sick men whole. Decarious, but are not some whole that we must make sick? That must we also. What it is, my case, I shall unfold to thee. Yes, the word thee, as we discussed earlier, that it has now been, these been changed with the word you. As we are going to whom it must be done. Decarious, set on your foot, and with the heart new fired, I follow you. With the heart new fired. Look at the new combination of the words that are there. To do, I know not what, but it sufficeth. Sufficeth. Yes, a new word with the addition of new, we can say with the addition of new suffix, it's the sound, the sound has been added to the word suffice. That Brutus leads me on. Brutus, follow me then. And the axioms. This was just a glimpse of what Shakespeare has, what and how Shakespeare has talked about language, what and how kind of language he has actually, what kind of language he has used in his writing, that was his writing actually being a replica of Renaissance age. So with this we come towards the end of our today's lecture. Let me just quickly revise the things that we have done with you. First of all, today we started our lecture with the spelling reforms in the early English period. You have seen that there are many spellings that have changed. There are many spellings that have been changed by applying different techniques. And these techniques, the important techniques were clippings. Some of the important other techniques were borrowing other loan words. There we have looked at the variety of the loan words that English has taken up, and then we moved on and we have looked at grammatical innovations that have taken place in English. And then we have actually discussed one very important thing today, that was about language change, because we are saying we have come into the modern English period, and within modern English period we are seeing that so many things are changing, and language change being a very big component of our course. That's why I just give you a touch base to that idea, that what is language change, what are different factors. We have not looked into that much detail of the factors. We have just looked at one issue, at the one aspect of language change, and this aspect, as you know, it was what we have studied, that whether language change is a progress or decay. We have looked at the contributions of different people, at the different quotations that were there, and that have led us to give a view that language, perhaps one person say, if on one hand one say that it's a progress, on the other hand the other would say that it's a decay. But towards the end we ended up on a neutral note, and the note was that the language is a kind of progress, as well it is actually a struggling state. It is about the struggling things. These two are the different states. These two states are continuously struggling within the structure of language to sometimes to show some kind of progress, and sometimes to show some kind of decay as well. Then towards the end of our today's lecture, we have also looked at different examples from Shakespeare's writing, and the examples were taken from the Act 2 of Julius Caesar. It was a good conversation between the two characters, and we have seen that in these two characters there were actually and a few of the words only that we could not understand, or that were perhaps a feature of that age, Renaissance age, and that have perhaps vanished these days. So we have tried to point out those things as well. So let's end our lecture today here. I hope that you will keep reading the things, you will keep reading the relevant material. Please take good care of yourself. Until then, Allah Hafiz.